Top of the morning to you today. Got a hold of this. This is a DM 220. It's a David Heffler amp. It's made in probably the 80s. This was a kit, or a you could buy this pre-assembled. And actually, I got a tuner also. It's kind of a funny but sad but good for me story. So if you want to advance on, you won't have to listen to me drone on about the story, but if you're curious, you can hang in there. Basically, I go to a couple auctions a week. It's a routine practice. And a couple weeks ago, this came up for auction with the tuner. And it went for about, the pair of them went for about $70 or $80, which at the time didn't seem horrible, but there's a couple of folks there that if they want something, they're going to get it hell or high water. You kind of learn those folks. And, I don't know, it's easier not to get in there and box with them on certain items. So I just gave it a miss. I had anyway, when they sold it, they said that the amp had blown a fuse inside. Well, I didn't think any more about it. And a week later, the person that bought this was complaining to one of the auctioneers that I believe it was the tuner's power button was screwed up. And it was going on, and the guy said, well, we'll take care of you, we'll make it right. So basically they just let him return the thing, even though everything is as is, and it's not going to get any better. That's okay. You got to do what you got to do to take care of your customers. And some of us are a little more tolerant than others, and that's okay. So then a week after that, this came up for auction again. It was the last item of the night, and the auctioneer mentioned that the amp had blown a fuse, and that the power button was screwed up on the tuner. Well, on the tuner, the power button is, it's a push on, push off type power button, and it's crushed in. And I've actually taken it apart, and basically what's happened is it's got one of those they're an old power switch. They used to use them in a lot of stereo stuff. They call them a snap switch. And basically it looked like somebody had punched the thing and knocked the back out of the thing, so it's pretty much screwed. If I'm lucky, I'll find a new one. But since it's stuck on, I'm not really worried about it. It appears to work just fine. So the amp I was gonna fiddle with today. And like I said, this was a sort of, I wouldn't really call this a kit per se. It was because if I remember right, the circuit boards are pre-assembled, and that one happens to be loose. And you did some rudimentary wiring, which if you've never done a kit before probably seems quite a daunting task, but if you've ever built like a Heathkit type device, this would be a no-brainer. All the tough stuff was done. One of the things I noticed about this amp is they were really not afraid to put a lot of fuses in this thing. It's got a mains fuse. This has a bipolar power supply, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. It's got a pair of fuses for each amp. These are two separate amps in one chassis is what they are. And then the speaker lead has a fuse in it. And actually they're kind of the repair service sort of assembly manuals that came with it. I was looking those over, and what I've done here is I went ahead and replaced the mains fuse in the thing. And whenever I power up big power amps, there's usually only a couple things really go wrong with these things. So what I do is I use a watt meter and a voltmeter and a variac, which I've got over here. Yeah, there's the variac up in the corner. And here's the watt meter here. You could use the what they call you could use a dim bulb tester too. I'm not going to go to a lot of details. Basically, it's a light bulb in series, so if you have a short, might have to shut you off here. Don't get me the attack of the leaf blowers. Let me shut you off for a second. Nope. The minute I do, he'll stop. I'm gonna shut you off. Well, anyway, there we go. Okay, that wasn't too bad. At least it wasn't barking dogs. So anyway, what I do is, back to the dim bulb tester. Basically, it's just a light bulb of appropriate wattage in series with the thing you're going to test. And if there's a short, the light lights up full power, and if there's not, it kind of glows dimly. You can look it up on the internet. It's a pretty basic piece of test equipment. For those of us who are lucky enough to have a Variac and watt meter, I use that. I've got a pretty good idea what's wrong with this thing. Since the mains fuse blew on it, it leads me to believe that it's probably something in the power supply. So what I'm going to do here is just, I'm going to go ahead and power the amp on, but I've got the Variac turned off. And I've also got the power down to 0. And I don't know if I can get both meters in here or not. It might be. Yeah, it's going to be a bit of a trial. Well, we'll just look at the watt meter. So you probably ought to see, if I remember right, these things run sitting idling with no program music at them. They run at about 100 watts. So I'm going to go ahead and just power this up a little bit. And, nah, that's not good. I had about 50 watts at about 30 amps, or 30 volts, excuse me. So there's something obviously wrong with it. Well, one of the things I could do is I could pop the mains fuse out, or I could pop all these power supply, DC power supply rails for the amps out, which would probably be a pretty good guess. I think I'm going to do that. That seems like a pretty safe thing to do. I would have thought though that the mains, or the amp, the power supply fuses would have blown if one of these was bad. So we'll just do it just to do some diligence. You got to start somewhere. And that'll leave the power supply isolated from the amp, which is a good thing, in case it's got any bad cooties going on or anything. So let's go back over to the watt meter here. Well, get it to focus. There it goes. So let's turn it back on and open her up a little bit. Oh, I shut the amp off, excuse me. Yep, that's not good. Okay. Well, what I really believe it is, which is fine, is it's probably one of those 2 filter caps. Well, we could do something easy. You could take your voltmeter and set it on ohms. And what you could do is go ahead and turn the amp back off and open the transformer up. Now when you're doing work like this with mains voltages, you want to keep your head screwed on straight. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the power leads loose from the cap. Since this is a bipolar power supply, these 2 caps are in essence in series, but one is a negative with a positive to ground. This center rail is neutral or ground, and one is negative with the positive side to the power supply. This is probably what you're more familiar with. So when you measure from here, which is ground, this is plus and this is minus. But we'll just beat the rush and get out the old fluke voltmeter here. I don't know. Well, how about sideways? Will that work? No, I'm just going to short the leads. Yeah, this is going to be a little hard to see. Well, we can... well, let's see if we can move the... Let's try again. Here we go. There you go. So I know it's upside down, but let's try the positive one here first. That's me shorting the leads. That one appears to be okay. Let's try that. Oops, that's not good. Yeah. So basically, in a nutshell, the cap on the negative side is blown up. So, tell you what we'll do. Well, we aren't going to do anything till I find my needle nose. And how about we fish that screw out of there? Yeah. We'll just screw that baby back on. This is actually, to be really honest with you, this is a common occurrence on these amps, but we can play the game. This would be a very similar kind of repair exploration on any amp. You know, if you got a little power amp or maybe a receiver that's blown up, this might be pretty similar. Well, what I've done is I've just hooked the negative or the positive back up, and we'll turn the amp back on. We still have everything basically opened up, and yeah, I've got it up to 50 volts there, and nothing's happening. Okie dokie. Well, I was kind of ready for this little eventuality. Hence, that's what this great big temporary replacement cap is. Now keep in mind, if you're going to work with these have bipolar power supplies. I've said that before, and for those of you who don't know what they are, you really want to hook the power supply. This is the positive, and it's going to go where the positive is on this one. It's tattooed there. And this is the negative. We'll just hook it over here temporarily. And we'll drop the screw wherever it disappeared to. Where did that go? Oh, probably went under the transformer. There it is. No good deed goes unpunished. Just make sure everything's off before we get to poking around in there. Oh, we'll just leave that out. And we'll bend that lead up so it doesn't touch. This is going to be what's wrong with the thing. And actually you can just stay there and I'll turn this back up. Yeah, it's okay, so those caps should hold a little residual charge. We could check that real quick. And it's 27 volts. And 30 volts. Yeah. It's a few volts off. That cap might have been sitting around a little bit, could use a good charging. Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. Let's see, we're going to turn this all back off. And short there. And short there. What I did there was I just shorted the caps to ground, or grounded them out to make sure that they are both at 0. I'll just check that. That way when I stick the fuses back in the thing, it won't be doing anything naughty. So we're off. I didn't think about that very carefully, but that's okay. Again, be careful when you're working on this stuff. I remember working on, I think it was a PV tube amp one time, and it was, interestingly enough, for some reason, the plate voltage was on the metal base of those tubes. The tubes had a kind of a sort of metallized tube socket, and I reached over there and got knocked on my butt. Although, that's one of the reasons you're kind of careful when you do stuff. Okay, so let's see here. Anyway, We should be able to bring this up. This should draw a little current now. Yeah, this is gonna take off and run, so we can. Ducky. Okay, so let's just let it have it. Okay. So it looks like it came up. I don't see any flames shooting out of it. Let's see what kind of voltage we got here. It's 58. Wrong one. How about that one? 58.8. But that's at about 115 volts. There's 120 volts in. So it'll probably be about, I don't know what, 63 volts. 61.8. 61.8. Okie dokie. That means that transformer is probably in the, I don't know, 40 volt AC range on the output. It has a center tap winding, so it's probably about 90 volts center tapped, which would be 45 volts either side roughly, if I had to guess. So there you go. You can see that it's drawn, I don't know, about 100 watts at 120 volts. So there you go. We're kind of back on the road again. I'll have to order a pair of caps. And there you go. I'll let it run a little bit. These kind of ran kind of warm, if I remember right. Now, one of the other things you might run into is that one of the output, I believe this has FETs. If you have a power amp, it could have FETs or transistors or MOSFETs. A lot of times they take a beating, so one of the things you can do is you can pull those out. If your short is on the, onto the amp side, I would pull those out. They're kind of one of the first things to blow up, and you can check those easy enough. That's a large portion of power amp repair. The other thing it could be too is you could have some caps dried up on the little driver boards, and they could be throwing the DC or the bias off a little bit. But that's a different video to go into. Now let's let this sit and run and perk a while. It's probably just fine. I would, to be real honest, I would normally go get a source of music and power it up. But the last time I tested something on YouTube, they flagged my video and said it was they were unhappy or it was a violation or something, because I had 10 seconds of music from some radio station, I remember. So we want to make those folks happy, even though they're a little bit fussy. Now I probably get a flag because I mentioned YouTube and didn't say something positive about them. Well, we're still running away. So I'll tell you what we're going to do. I'm going to shut you off and come back here in a minute. Take her easy.
By Ennio Morricone, that was the Rome Sinfonietta, and cellist Yo-Yo Ma. I'm Dana Buckingham. Thank you for joining me this morning.
I don't know if the radio station died or the power amp died. Doesn't appear to. Yeah, let me switch it off, find some. Here's a connection on my speakers going to hell.
Israel and the UK are carrying out DNA, fingerprint and ballistic tests. Mr. Lenko also spoke about the number of bodies they expected to find in the building, where 3 floors collapsed.
I want to focus on the issue of people under the rubble. We have begun the exercise. Any bodies hold up there. We are convinced that there will be insignificant, if any,
Was predicated on this notion.
terrorists.
The UN says more than 2 weeks of fierce fighting between government troops and Muslims.
Because of the wonderful rover.
Right next to Mangelson's in the west.
Well, anyway, I was just jacking around. Have a good day. Take it easy.